All right, I hear that we now have audio, so it is time to begin. Hi, friends. I'm Bee Spear, of course, the host of Under the Desk News on TikTok, taking complicated, oftentimes politicized issues and breaking them down into easy to understand truths. And I am absolutely thrilled to be back talking with my friend and registered dietitian, Chef Kaylee Anderson, about how to take a fresh new look at the way we view nutrition, especially around the new year when everyone is starting their resolutions and starting to freak out about what is my relationship with food going to look like this year. So Kaylee, I am very thrilled that you're here. But before we dive into the presentation, just tell folks a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, V. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. So I am a registered dietitian, and I have a little bit of a unique background because, through my experience working with people, I quickly realized that food is about way more than just nutrition, and our relationship with food is much bigger than that. So I also have training in natural foods cooking, because cooking and eating and that experience with food is so important. I'm board certified in lifestyle medicine, which is just the practice of using other lifestyle pillars like managing stress, movement, healthy relationships, all of those other components of our health that are important. I felt like it was important to, also include those things. And then I'm also an intuitive eating counselor, which will kind of flavor a lot of what we'll talk about today, because I think one big thing I've realized is that our relationship with food is really an inside job, and it's so easy to want to outsource it to, gurus and experts and influencers, but really you know a lot more about what's good for you than what you give yourself credit for.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and I love that about you, Kaylee. We are even going to talk about, if you've had a history of disordered eating, how you can find intuition and tap into your own body's responses and learn how to maybe answer those cues a little bit in a way that you prefer. So as always, what I love about these sessions is that there is no fat shaming, there's no calorie counting, there is no like bad diet that's going to get you out of this, or that we're going to push you into buying any products. There's no product sale at the end of this. There's no magic pill. There's nothing. It's just me and my friend Kaylee here talking about food and the ways that we can have a better relationship with food, not just for our health, but also for our mental health and for our social health, and for the ways that we're just showing up in the world more authentically and with better flavors. So Kaylee, you have prepared a presentation to help kind of guide us through that conversation. So wherever you want to get started, I am ready to learn and listen.
Sure, sounds good. I'll go ahead and share that presentation. Are you able to see it?
Yep, looks great.
All right. So welcome everyone again to the New-Trition Resolutions webinar. And I'm so glad to be here with all of you today. I already introduced myself. So again, hi, I'm Kaylee. And today we're going to talk about kind of diets and New Year's resolutions, because it is that time of year when we are bombarded by all the diets. And just kind of raise your hand if you, or maybe a client or patient, if you're a healthcare provider that you've worked with, has been stuck in this cycle that I call the diet cycle. So it goes a little bit like this. You discover a shiny new diet, you feel super hopeful about the promises of that diet, and so you start, I think are you seeing the diet cycle, V?
I am seeing it. It's sort of like taking a minute to load. Yeah.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure that we saw that. Okay, so as I was saying, you're in that, hopeful phase. And so you start on this diet, you start following these strict rules and restrictions. And then after a while, feelings of deprivation creep in until you can't ignore them any longer. And you maybe even start to feel a little bit out of control around food and distracted around food. It's hard for you to enjoy yourself until eventually you break the diet rules. And this inevitably leads to feelings of guilt and shame about breaking your diet. And then finally, your guilt fuels you to jump on the next diet and start the process all over again. And it's like a treadmill that you feel like you can't step off of. And you might go around and around on the same diet, or maybe you're always looking for something new, but you always seem to end up right back where you started. And each time it feels a little more disempowering and a lot more exhausting. And it makes you feel like there's something wrong with you, like you can't do this for some reason. So you and your clients are not alone in this cycle. At any given time, over a third of Americans are following a diet, and that number is even higher this time of year, of course. But I'm going to tell you something that you need to hear if you found yourself caught in this cycle. Dieting is a setup. Dieting is specifically designed to keep you coming back again and again and keep you blaming yourself each time you fail instead of blaming the diet. But guess what? It's not you, it's them. And by them, I mean the diets. Because it's estimated that 95% of diets actually fail. So most dieters will regain their lost weight in 1 to 5 years after embarking on that diet. And this is not because these people lack willpower, it's because the diets are not designed to work. So let's talk about 6 reasons why diets don't work. And then I'm going to share 5 things that you can do instead that actually do work to support your health. So first, diets are designed to be unsustainable. So part of their allure is that they have really black and white rules. They have short-term promises, and every fad diet comes with a do's and don'ts list, right? So it feels super clear and easy to follow at first. But diets always have this time frame also attached to them that's short enough to really entice you. So like a 30-day challenge or a 7-day juice cleanse or a 24-hour fast. And this is just enough time to make you buy the book or order all the products and feel super hopeful. But here's the thing, we eat 3 meals a day, give or take, right? And we're going to be doing that for the rest of our lives. And diets rarely prepare you for what to do after that initial short timeline is over. And also, by the way, something I think is really important, diets, their rules and timeframes don't ever consider anything about your life, your needs, your preferences, your culture, all the things that make you unique and make your life fun and enjoyable.
Kaylee, that's such an interesting point, just going back to root one here. I mean, I know we've all probably done that 30-day whole 30 type situation. And what is reintroduction phase other than, okay, well, I cannot wait to get that pizza. I cannot wait to get that thing that I've deprived myself for the last 30 days from. And you sort of like messed it up and now it's time to start it all over again. That was very familiar. In addition, I love that you touched upon the fact that we really rarely ever talk about the fact that diets do not take into consideration culture, dietary restrictions, just your daily lifestyle, how you move about in the world. Not everybody is necessarily waking up, going to an office, has kids, and is coming home. And diets can tend to try to universalize the entire experience of what showing up and eating in the world is like. So I'm glad that you mentioned those up front here.
Exactly. I'm so glad that you pointed that out, because that's the stuff of life, right? Our other experiences like traveling or, your unique culture and, food traditions and those sorts of things. And when you follow a diet that's very, rigid and kind of a blanket set of rules for everybody, you kind of eliminate all of those things that make life worth living. So our second reason that diets don't work, they rely on the wrong type of motivation. So diets rely on what's called extrinsic motivation, which comes from something outside of ourselves. So something like a reward or someone else's approval or conforming to society's definition of what's acceptable for the way you look or how much you weigh, or maybe it's your mother's expectation or your peer group's definition of that. But extrinsic motivation can be motivating for a short time, but long-term change requires a different type of motivation, something called intrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation comes from within us. We resource it from ourselves. And it's doing something to achieve rewarding feelings like joy or pleasure, or doing something because it's connected to our core values. So for example, if you go on a diet to reach a certain number on the scale, or to change the way that you look externally, these are extrinsic motivators, motivating for a short time, but they don't have staying power. But eating well because it improves your mood, or it helps you sleep better, or it gives you more energy, and generally just makes you feel the way you want to feel in life, is intrinsic motivation. And that's the stuff of lasting change.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, if you told me, well, this is going to help you hit your calorie count, I might be certainly like interested, but not totally motivated. But if you said, hey, you're going to be able to sleep tonight, I know exactly what that's going to feel like. That's going to be a huge motivation for me. Feeling less stressed, having more mental clarity, having satisfaction, like all of that, just seeing it laid out up against extrinsic motivation, it just makes so much sense. I'm glad that you were able to line that out for us.
Yeah, exactly. And these things are going to look a little bit different for everybody. So what motivates you might not be the same thing that motivates me. And that's kind of the beauty of it, is we all have our own kind of things that drive us in life. And it's about identifying those instead of allowing someone else, a diet book, to tell you what's supposed to be motivating to you, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And with extrinsic motivation, then we also don't have to try to hide the things that we want to do, because if our purpose is to avoid judgment, well, we just won't put that meal on the Instagram now, will we? We'll still have it, but it won't actually, we'll get into hiding food, which is of course like a bigger issue that we'll talk about later on, but thanks for pointing that out.
Exactly. Okay, so our third reason why diets don't work, your pleasure is almost always missing from a diet. And I would go as far as to say it is always missing from a diet. Because in fact, diets often shame us or make us feel guilty for liking foods, or liking, specific foods, which is so silly, because we are meant to enjoy food as humans. It ensures our survival. So we're designed that way. We're designed to enjoy this thing. And food also plays a lot of different roles in our lives as humans, and it's important to acknowledge that. With my clients, I always talk about the idea of bringing your whole self to the table, and not trying to fit in these narrow, boxes of what's good and what's bad, and what you're supposed to eat and what you're not supposed to eat. So diets usually want us to see food just as fuel, and as kind of good versus bad. But food is also pleasure, it's comfort, it connects us, it holds memories, it's part of our culture and traditions. And you might be able to think of even more roles it plays. So I work with a lot of plant-based clients. So their food choices often align with certain ethics or values that they have. Or if you, choose to eat organic, or other choices around kind of the environmental impact of food. Those are other kind of meanings that food holds for you that are important to acknowledge.
Something that you're saying here, memories. I mean, so much of the way we eat and the way that we comfort ourselves is in that memory. You're starting to get a little sniffle, and I'm going to make the soup that my mom made me, or I just got something bad at work happened, I'm going to go home and make the stuff my grandma used to make me when I wanted to feel good. There's so much of food, like anything that's pleasurable in our life, is locked into those memories, and such an important thing to put forward when we're talking about building a better relationship with food.
Exactly. And our culture has kind of shamed us for having those other connections to food. But, as long as, kind of on the topic of emotional eating, as long as you are meeting your needs, so sometimes food can cover up self-care. So maybe we're eating a pint of ice cream instead of having that hard conversation that we really need to have. So
Right.
In that case, the ice cream's not going to have the conversation for us. So it's probably better to have the conversation. But as you were, some of the examples that you gave, making that soup that your mom used to make you when you were sick, or making the cookies that your grandma made for a little bit of comfort. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think diets often, tell us that there is, or there's something wrong with us, because we get other kinds of feelings and gratification from food besides just fuel.
Right.
Yeah. So I want everyone kind of on that note, I want everyone to just quickly think of your favorite meal. And then I want you to think about why it's your favorite meal. Does it give you a certain feeling? Is it connected to a memory or a place or a person that's important to you? Do the flavors or the textures of the meal just give you a lot of enjoyment? And this is a really cool finding that I want you all to hear. So studies actually show that we absorb more of the nutrients from a meal when we enjoy it. So if we are in a state of joy when we are eating, we will actually absorb more nutrients. So your pleasure and your enjoyment is literally part of your health, part of the health equation. And on the other hand, studies show us that dieting perpetuates a lot of fixation and stress around eating. So you're in that like fight or flight state while you're eating, and that is not a good state of mind to be in, or a body state to be in, to actually absorb nutrition. So I think that's so cool that it's literally, part of our health that we enjoy the food we're eating.
Wait, say that one more time, Kaylee. So when you are happy eating, your body is absorbing more nutrients. When you are mad making a salad because the book said this is what we have on Wednesday at 3 p.m. and it comes out of my purple container, you're actually triggering like cortisol and stress, which retains fat and problems, right? That's an issue, cortisol.
Exactly.
Oh, God, Kaylee.
Isn't that so cool?
That is a great, yeah, I'm so mad at every book I've ever read and all those purple containers now, but that just makes so much sense. Of course, like when you're, it's like when we say when you're cooking with love, you can taste it in the food. It's the same thing, because that other person is also enjoying the love that you put into it, having a better experience, retaining more nutrients, obviously not having cortisol spikes because they're stressed out about it. That's incredible.
Exactly. Yeah. When you're in that stress kind of fight or flight state, your body shuts down your digestion. So you're not digesting and absorbing the nutrients in the food that you're eating. But when you're in that relaxed state, when you're feeling happy and enjoying your meal, then you're more likely to absorb the nutrition from it. Love that so much. So our fourth reason why diets don't work: they disconnect you from yourself. And diets usually frame your body and your life as a problem that needs to be fixed or controlled. And they essentially teach you that you don't know what's best for you and someone else knows what's best. So they kind of tell you to, give your power over to this, diet guru or face of the diet, that they know better than you do, and that they kind of put you at war with your body. So, I really believe that the path to health is connecting more with yourself. We're already all pretty disconnected from ourselves. We're distracted, and we're, kind of going through life on autopilot, especially these past couple of years. And, it's really convenient for the diet industry to have us disconnect from ourselves and say, oh, you tell us what to do. But it really prevents you from becoming your own expert, which is so important to kind of long-term health.
Yeah, that's cult thinking. We don't want to do that. Anytime you're giving your power over to the guru and they're, removing freedoms from you, that's of course a cult and a bad idea. We don't want to go down that path.
Exactly. And there are a lot of similarities between cults and diets. So I'll just leave that there. But our fifth reason why diets don't work is that the most common outcome of dieting is something that's called weight cycling, or something that you might know as yo-yo dieting. So let me repeat that. The most common thing that you can experience if you go on a diet is repeatedly losing and regaining weight. And that's not exactly the promise result that you're probably looking for when you go on a diet. And weight cycling is actually really unhealthy for us. So it disrupts our hormones. It makes it harder for you to, recognize when you're hungry versus when you're full. It blunts your metabolism. It increases inflammation in the body. And it actually puts you at higher risk for a lot of chronic diseases like heart disease, high blood pressure, insulin resistance. So these are not great outcomes. And this is the main reason why I don't focus on weight when I work with people, because, focusing on weight and losing weight they're most likely going to regain that weight. And we don't get into all the kind of the physiology of that, but this is the most likely outcome, and it actually damages your health.
Yeah, very important thing that you just said. It affects your hormones. It can blunt your metabolism, which of course is like why we're getting into this in the first place. When people are going on a diet to lose weight, in some cases, you're completely destroying it. But we're seeing a bunch of questions pop up here about hormonal health and eating. So we'll get to those in just a little bit. But yeah, incredibly important to hear again and reiterate, the most common experience on a diet is repeated weight cycling. So that's not to think that we're going to be the one that breaks the cycle necessarily and wins the diet war. Just hear that this is not set up for our success. So
yeah,
what we can do.
Yeah, so true. Okay, and then finally, our sixth reason why diets don't work. They make big promises about being able to change your body. And the thing is, your health, weight, and body shape are about so much more than how much or how little food you eat. So diets want you to think that it's all about that. And if you just follow these rules, then you can, transform the way that you look. But there are many, many factors at play. So diets simply can't fulfill this promise to change you because it's either impossible or way more complex than they're making it seem. And we won't dive too deeply into this one right now. This is a topic that I'm super passionate about, though. But I will say that we would all benefit from expanding the definition of what healthy looks like, because you can be healthy and not look anything like the quote unquote picture of health that the diet industry paints for us. It's a very narrow definition. And I'm sure that many of us, if not all of us, have been victims of that compare and despair feeling of looking at these pictures of people and thinking I'm just not doing it right if I don't look that way, which is not true.
Exactly. It's the same thing with when you go to to your salon and you show them a picture of Jennifer Aniston's hair and say, I want my hair to look like that. It's not going to happen. You know how many people and how many weaves are built into that hair to look like that for that photo shoot? It's unrealistic. It's the same thing for your body. Just like you can't get a haircut like a movie star, you're not going to get a body like a photograph that's been heavily edited in many cases, or even if it hasn't, that person's genetics and just their physical way that their two parents' bodies came together to form theirs is not going to be the same as yours. So definitely bringing back some individualism to the way that we see ourselves in the mirror is so, so important.
Exactly. And I always encourage people to look at different cultures around the world and kind of their different definitions of what beauty looks like or what ideal, body shape looks like. And just that alone shows you that this is not like this definition of health that we think of, a skinny body or whatever it might be, it's not scientifically the healthiest way to look. It's culturally what we've decided is the way people should look. And
right.
And it's different in lots of different cultures. So that shows you that, you can look in a lot of different ways and still be healthy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So now the good stuff. Let's talk about 5 things that you can do instead of dieting.
I'm ready.
All right. So first and foremost is to start a reflective practice to create some space in your mind. And you might be like, what? How is this going to help me be healthier? So every situation that life presents us, we have 2 choices. So we can either react in that situation or we can respond to that situation. So reacting is what we do when we kind of mindlessly go about life, doing things the way we've always done them on autopilot. But responding, on the other hand, is about making choices in our life with intention. And there's nothing wrong with having goals and, setting out to achieve goals for, 2022. But to achieve our goals, we have to learn to respond instead of react. And the difference between reacting and responding is having that little bit of space in your mind where you can kind of step back and make a different choice. So there's a great quote by James Clear. He wrote the book Atomic Habits, which is a really wonderful book, that says every action is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. So with every action we take, we have the opportunity to kind of vote for that person that we want to become, or that new habit that we want to form. And in order to be intentional about our actions and cast a vote for that person we want to be, we need a little space in our mind. So this can be something like meditation, but it can also look lots of different ways. And mind space is something that you build over time through a regular reflective practice. So that's really the important piece, is that you do it regularly and you find something that speaks to you. So it could be meditation, it could also be journaling, it could be time in nature, it could be just taking 3 deep breaths before you make a choice, or doing what I call the mindful pause. So related to food and nutrition, before you choose something to eat, just pause for a moment and ask yourself, how am I feeling? What's my hunger level? What sounds good? What would satisfy me right now? You're essentially just turning inward for a second and kind of checking in with yourself. And if you give that a try before your next meal, and you can see how it might start to change the choices that you make, just that moment of pause, that moment of reflection, so you can respond instead of react. Our second thing that we can do is really powerful. And I think you can learn to appreciate your body. And this might sound a little, cutesy and a little too nice, but hear me out. So the way that dieting keeps you in that diet cycle is by keeping you at war with your body, as we talked about. And the way that you step out of the cycle is by learning to respect and trust yourself and your body. So in other words, you want to put yourself on the same team with your body instead of being at war with your body. And here's the magic in this one. So learning to respect and appreciate your body strengthens your desire to want to care for your body, because things that you respect and appreciate, you care for, right? And the desire to take care of your body will lead you to make decisions in your life that benefit your health. So that is intrinsic motivation right there, right? So you cultivate respect for yourself, that motivates you to want to take care of yourself, and then you start making decisions in your life in order to do that. So for the rest of January, we've got a couple weeks left here, I want you to try this. Each morning and evening, come up with just 2 to 3 things that you appreciate about your body, and write them down or say them out loud to yourself. And they can be, really, extravagant things, but they can also be really simple things, like, I appreciate that my heart beats without me even having to think about it. Like, there are so many amazing things that our bodies do for us. And, we're so used to disparaging them and judging them and comparing them. But if we can shift our mind so that we want to take care of them, that is a really wonderful place from which to set goals and make decisions about your health.
I hope everyone else wrote that down. I've been taking notes this whole time, but I appreciate the way my heart beats without me telling it to. It's just so thoughtful and kind, and what a lovely little moment to have with yourself.
Exactly. There are so many amazing things. Okay, so third, now that you are, created a little space in your mind, you're starting to approach decisions about your health from that place of kind of self-appreciation, we can move on to number 3, which is defining how you want to feel. And when we make resolutions, we often start with tangible goals. So lose 10 pounds, get a promotion, buy my favorite house, or buy my first house. But underlying those tangible goals are desired feelings. So the only reason we're setting those goals, the only reason we want to lose 10 pounds is because we hope it'll make us feel a certain way. So maybe it's, feeling accepted, or feeling happy, or feeling confident, or feeling loved. So this step is all about kind of flipping that around and starting with the desired feelings, and then letting your goals flow from there. So these feelings, these desired feelings that you define, will become kind of your compass for all decisions that you make. So say you want to feel happy. You might start to see that losing 10 pounds that process might actually make you feel miserable instead of happy. But you do know that, going for a walk every morning makes you happy, or spending time in nature on the weekends makes you feel happy, or, setting a weekly phone date with your best friend makes you feel happy. So you start to see, if when you start with the feeling, your goals really start to come alive from there. So right now, off the top of your heads, I want you to write down one desired feeling that you have for this year. All right, our fourth step to kind of what we can do instead of dieting is to let your satisfaction be your guide. So we talked earlier about how important pleasure is to your health, but these words, satisfaction and pleasure, they're confusing for many people. So you might be thinking, but if I only eat and do what feels good, I'm going to be on the couch with Netflix and a gallon of ice cream every day. But I want you to think about your satisfaction in a much bigger way. So yes, it includes your pure pleasure and enjoyment, things like binging Netflix or eating ice cream, but it also includes how you feel in your body. It includes your health. It includes how aligned you are in your values. So when you let your satisfaction guide your eating decisions, you make choices around food that balance all of these aspects. So ice cream and Netflix will only feel satisfying for so long. And eventually you might start craving some fresh air, or moving and stretching your body, or eating a full meal. And, this one's a bit nuanced, kind of identifying your satisfaction and seeing that, the things that bring pure pleasure aren't satisfying always, right? Sometimes it is satisfying to do really healthy things. So I want you to just start by simply asking yourself after you eat a meal, did I feel the way I wanted to feel during that meal? And do I feel the way I want to feel after that meal? So you might start to see like a glass of wine, right? You drink a glass of wine, you feel great while you're drinking it. But then you see when you check in, afterwards, you don't feel so great. It makes you, it's hard for you to sleep. You wake up a lot. You don't feel rested in the morning. So it starts to inform the choices that you make, right? So maybe next time you might pass on the glass of wine because it affects your sleep. So finding your satisfaction is, takes a little bit of work, but it's so important, and it's such a good guide for making health decisions.
That's an excellent point, Kaylee, to talk about what did you feel like when you were doing the thing that you thought would bring you satisfaction, and then how did you actually feel afterwards? Just bringing that mindfulness to eating. Maybe you grabbed the chips because you wanted something crunchy, but maybe pumpkin seeds would actually have been just as crunchy. And how do you feel during and after, as opposed to just subscribing to habits, and oftentimes habits that are driven by the marketing on TV that we're seeing. These things that marketing and advertising will tell you will give you the feeling of satisfaction or pleasure, but then when you do them, maybe they actually aren't. It's good to check in. Maybe they are, but maybe they're not. And it's good to actually ask yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, that's going to look a little bit different for everybody. It's going to look a little bit different for, you or me from day to day too. Some days that salad might feel great, after you eat it. And some days you might be hungry after you eat it. And you should have had something more substantial for your meal to feel satisfied. So it's really about kind of learning what that feels like for you. All right, our last but not least thing that you can do is to find meaningful ways to measure your health. So like I said, there's nothing wrong with having goals. There's nothing wrong with setting goals or wanting to be healthier, but we have to we have to really infuse it with meaning and that intrinsic motivation. So most diets measure your kind of quote unquote success with the number on the scale, or, did you meet your calorie goal that day? And the truth is that those are not great metrics for, indicators of your health. So in this last step, you get to decide what measurements are meaningful for you. And this will look differently for everyone, depending on what you are intrinsically motivated by. So for example, if you're focused on a certain health condition, then tracking a lab value like your cholesterol or your blood pressure might be really useful for you. If your goal is to simply feel better, then track how you feel, track your mood, track your energy levels. Some other ideas might be, the quality of your sleep, or having, fewer and fewer obsessive thoughts about food, or, measuring how present or rating how present you felt during a meal if you deal with a lot of distraction or intrusive thoughts while you're eating. You can even track certain, food groups or nutrients as long as they hold meaning for you. So that's the key. So how many fruits and vegetables you're eating, or how much fiber, these are all things that kind of shift the focus off of weight, off of appearance, off of calories, and put it onto things that actually mean something for you. Right. Well, I hope that this helped to shift your mindset about how you approach your 2022 health goals. And I'm excited to dive into our questions.
Yeah, Kaylee, thank you so much. I heard such great advice and just such great level setting for ways that I could be talking to myself and also to people that I'm helping along on their food journey. Mostly, we got a little further in the last couple of years with saying we need to include culture, lifestyle patterns, flavors, like seasonings, all the different types of things. And not assuming that everybody just happens to only have salt and pepper in their pantry, but actually wants to cook with all these other things. We got a little cultural in there, but what I learned from this one was really about the way that tangible goals, like I want to lose 10 pounds, I want to buy a house, those goals are laden with feelings. And by switching it up and saying, I want to feel successful, or I want to feel loved, or I want to feel confident, or I want to feel in control, or I want to feel whatever the case may be, if you're thinking about that first, and then you're backtracking down to how do I achieve that feeling most frequently? I want to feel happy. I like going on walks. If I lose weight because I go on walks, that's a better way to think of it than like, I have to go on walks to lose weight, right? Like it's just all, so much of it is mindset. And I will definitely be taking with me this fact that when you are eating happy and you are feeling happy, you're absorbing more nutrients. And when you are eating because you have to, because the book said to, or because whatever the case may be, of course it's going to raise your cortisol and make for not a very enjoyable meal and not a very, easy way to achieve your goals. Couple questions that came up, and you answered so many of the questions that came up just by guiding us through that presentation. Folks did want to know, is there a place they could find that study about food enjoyment? Is it just like look up food enjoyments, or?
Yeah, you know what? When we do the recap for this, I'll make sure that that's included.
Okay.
So everybody has
Perfect.
it.
Yeah, and we will be sending out, both you'll be able to watch this presentation later on Facebook pretty much anytime. We're going to send you a link to it when we do our follow-up, and we will follow up with that exact study about food enjoyment because that was really important. When we were talking about the feelings and motivations, folks had questions about the support of your friends and family. Let's say that you're a mom or a dad in a family, you've got a bunch of kids, you've got a partner who isn't necessarily maybe on the same health or eating journey that you are. How do you find motivation when you don't have the support, when you're making yourself a little chicken breast and they're like, we're not having fried chicken tonight? Like, how do you sort of like work against that?
Yeah, that can be a really tough one. So the first thing I would suggest is to find support somewhere. So if it's not in your immediate family or in your household, then look for it elsewhere. So if you're maybe working with a healthcare provider, working with a dietitian, or there are a lot of groups out there online or in person that built around things. So for example, like I said, I have a lot of plant-based clients. So there are a lot of meetup groups or even virtual groups where you can, ask questions or vent or have conversations with people who are like-minded. And that can be really helpful. Another way to do that is to kind of follow the things that you're trying to work on. So for example, if you are getting into running, find a local running group, and you're going to meet people that are like-minded in that situation, or take a virtual cooking class and you're going to connect with people that way. So find that support, because I think the key to dealing with people who might be either indifferent about your goals that you're working towards, or maybe even working against you in those goals, that can happen a lot with people even within their family. The key is to have some kind of support in place that will help you feel a little bit stronger, a little bit more validated in what you're doing. And then the second piece is really difficult, but it's setting those boundaries that need to be set with those people in your life. So communicating your goals to them, communicating why it's really important to you. Hopefully that's enough to get some respect or some buy-in, or at least some acceptance of what you're working on. If it's not, then you might have to set some boundaries. I work with a lot of women, a lot of moms who, are inevitably in charge of making 4 dinners for all the different tastes and preferences. And they've had to just set that boundary that, this is what we're having. And that's that. So, and that can be really hard for people and could require, working with a therapist or working with someone to help you navigate that. But
yeah, and
it's important.
Another way to set a boundary is to not tell people. If your mother-in-law is really rude to you about the way that you eat, don't tell her that you're on a diet. You don't have to tell her you're trying something new. If she says, you look like you lost weight, you can be like, oh, I guess so. I don't know. You don't owe people all of the details of your life either. Setting a boundary when it's going to be respected and folks can understand like why it's important to you is one thing. And then just not telling people who don't support you is also an option if they're far enough out of your household that you don't need to answer to them, or they're, intrusive questions. That's also something hard to learn, but very important.
Yeah, not sharing is also a boundary, right?
Not sharing is also a boundary.
unspoken.
You could be working on whatever you want. If somebody says to you, hey, you look like, this, that, or the other, or you look younger, you brighter, whatever the case may be, you're like, oh, it must be just the light. You don't owe them your secrets either.
Yes, my favorite definition of a boundary is the distance between you and another person that allows you to love them as best as you can. So that might be a far distance or just a little distance.
That is a very accurate. I'm going to write that one down. That is a very accurate thought. While we were also talking about intuitive eating, and I promised that we would get to this question, for folks who have experienced eating disorders in the past, how can they start their journey towards intuitive eating when they have sort of learned that they maybe don't feel like they can trust themselves?
Yeah, and intuitive eating can be really excellent for people who, are working on recovery from an eating disorder. And I've actually worked in inpatient eating disorder treatment before, so I this group of people is very near and dear to my heart. Yeah, I would start first of all making sure, if this is you, that you are working with a professional. So that might be a healthcare professional, but certainly a mental health professional as well, whether that's a counselor or therapist. I think that's really crucial. And I won't work with people who are in recovery unless they have that kind of support in place. So that's step one. Step two, finding someone who is intuitive eating trained is really great. So dietitians can get training, but also other, social workers, therapists, doctors also get training in this. So looking for someone who has that training. And there's a book, Intuitive Eating, and I would highly recommend that as a starting place to kind of start this journey. And they also have a workbook that takes you through different exercises to start to explore and unpack your relationship with food, and to start to work on healing that. So those are some good resources to start with.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, people who get into cycling, right? You're like, well, I know how to ride a bike, but riding a bike. No, it's not. No, it's not. There is a reason, why folks get trained in this, and there are tricks and steps to it, and just legacy knowledge to how to recognize intuitive eating versus like mental direction or sort of emotional direction. And there is no shame in figuring those things out and learning them. And it's fun to learn stuff. But definitely, get somebody who you can really trust, who's not guruing you into saying, I'm going to show you how to intuitive eat, but is actually like, hey, this is actually a journey with a process, and there's some science and cool stuff behind it, and I'd love to share that with you. Then you know that you're in the right spot.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out. I was just going to say, there's a lot of stuff out there right now that's masquerading as, anti-diet or intuitive eating, but it's really just the diet industry in disguise. So be careful of that.
Absolutely. Couple lightning round questions, just quick answers, because we only got a minute left here.
Sure.
We've got a lot of work from home folks who are saying that they're sitting at their desk and the kitchen is right there. How do you kind of prevent yourself from grazing?
Yeah, so I'm big on kind of setting up your environment to work for you and not against you. So, we are triggered by visual, cues in our environment. So just put that stuff away. If there's things that you don't want to be reaching for, put them in the cabinet, out of sight. out of mind is actually pretty true when it comes to health, and put something else, in its place. So we can't just always remove, we have to replace. So put some apples on the counter, put, some fresh fruit on the counter so that you'll reach for that instead.
Makes sense. Yeah. And I'm telling you, I bought this desk for $30 just to buy a little desk. I started off also working from my kitchen table. You just sometimes got to buy yourself a little $30 desk at Target and move it to a corner of your bedroom, move it to your basement, move it to somewhere else where you can just have a different space, just because it potentially seems less convenient, or it might be ugly, or what if I ever want to put it away? You will put it away. It's not a problem. Get yourself a little $30 desk and move it out of the kitchen if that's going to be helpful to you, and just help you stay focused and more, not feel like you're only in one room all the time too.
Yeah.
Last two questions, quick. Daycare planning for kids when you are trying to eat better. How are you, planning when your kids are home?
Yeah. So is this kind of asking, packing something separate for the kiddos, or eating when my kiddos are home?
All of a sudden now, mom or dad or one of the adults in the house wants to go on a health journey, and the kids are used to just eating the way that it was before, or perhaps it's, we all fall into with kids, like, it's just easier. I just need them to eat something, so I'm just going to give them this thing because they have to eat food today. Like, what are some things that we could be doing to just not put ourselves at the emergency situation when it comes to feeding our kids, and like we've got stuff ready that's not going to cause a fight?
Yeah, got it. That makes sense. Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, and that can be really tough to kind of shift, can feel like you're turning the Titanic when you're trying to get your whole family on board, right? It's not as easy as just yourself. So first of all, explaining age appropriately, obviously, that you're going to try something new, or that they're going to be some new foods. And then second, involve them in it. So let them pick things out at the grocery store. I know this can take more time, and it's not as streamlined as shopping without them, or when you just kind of do the shopping yourself, but let them pick one fruit or vegetable to try, because if they feel included in it, then they're going to be more likely to eat it. And then, at first you're going to have to start by serving things alongside things that are familiar. So if you're having a new food, don't transform their entire plate overnight, but serve them their chicken nuggets or whatever they're used to, and then put one new thing on their plate to kind of shift those habits a bit.
Makes a ton of sense. And we did focus a lot on families and young folks right now and the way that they're eating. Any advice for people over 50 who may be needing to, they've gone so far in their life with one way of eating, maybe now we're trying to include supplements, just general advice for folks over 50?
Yeah, sure. So one thing I always say is that your taste buds will change. So we actually make new taste buds every, I think it's like 6 weeks or so. So you might not love the flavors of healthier foods if that's something that you're not used to eating, or even like reducing your salt intake. That's a common one. It might taste bland at first, but your taste buds will eventually adjust. So just kind of giving your body that time to adjust, and trusting that eventually these things will actually start to taste good can be really helpful.
Okay, I have learned something very key here. So your taste buds reset every 6 weeks, essentially. They're regrowing, so you can start to narrow down a little less salt, little less salt, little less salt. That's incredible.
That's right. Yeah.
I cannot wait to share that with my parents. Keely, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you. We are a little bit over time, so thank you for giving us the extra time. For folks who tuned in, thank you so much for being with us and for these incredible questions. We're going to follow up with both an article that recaps everything that we talked about today. We will also, in the follow-up, give you a link to rewatch. Keely's going to tell us where you can find the study on food enjoyment. We may even throw some Super Bowl recipes into the recap for y'all. And you can, of course, watch this again on Facebook. So thank you again to Everything Food, and to Shauna, especially for putting this together and being our Zoom guru, to Kaylee, to the audience. And if you're looking for any of us, you can find Kaylee at KayleeAnderson.com. You can find me at Under the Desk News on TikTok and Instagram, and Everything Food at everythingfood.com. So thank you all so much. We'll see you next month when we do another one of these chats with our friends and nutritionists. And if you have any questions, of course, email us and we will do our best to help you get those answers. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.